If you are raising goats, then you need to be prepared with a kidding kit. When that time of year rolls around, you want to be as prepared as possible when the goat labor signs appear. Nothing is more nerve-wracking and awe-inspiring than watching life be born. I have made it a point to be at each one of my doe's side during labor and delivery, and I am so glad it's worked out. It is relieving to know I'm there to help, and it's amazing to watch the miracle of life. I believe it will do you and your goats so much good to be a part of this process, even if you don't have to step in to help. In this video, I'm going to talk through the 11 signs of goat labor and the 3 very important stages of labor that will start and finish with labor and delivery. If you would also like to or prefer to read this information, the link is below this video. My name is Delci. I'm the founder of A Life of Heritage, and I love my goats, and I want to help you raise your goats to the very best of your ability so that they can and you can have the happiest life and the best possible outcomes. The first signs you will look for are what begins stage 1 of labor, and it is all of the signs of your goat's body just preparing for labor and delivery. The first sign is that your doe's udder will swell. This sign can occur between 4 to 6 weeks before kidding or right before kidding. What you need to know is that all does are different. Some may begin to fill up right before birth and then actually finish filling after delivery. And first-time fresheners may show this sign earlier and more prominently. When they do fill up, their bags will be tight and shiny when they fill. Because all goats are different and because it's so hard to remember every detail from year to year, it's so important to record this information in a goat health and information binder like the one linked below. Taking notes on how your does progress through labor will help you in the next year. Each note you will make will remind you and be your brain from year to year, and you will see patterns in how each of your does act in pregnancy and labor. The second sign is that the kid or doe will drop and give your doe a sunken side and prominent hip bones. This sign will usually happen in the last week, between 1 to 5 days before kidding. As the kids move into place for delivery, they will drop and give the doe that sunken look to her sides, her spine, and her hips will become more prominent. Before this happens, her sides will usually look very full and pregnant. The third sign is that the tail ligaments will loosen throughout the last month or so of pregnancy. The ligaments of her tail will begin to loosen. When the tail ligaments are completely gone and you can wrap your fingers around the tail head, active labor will begin within 24 hours. Just know that this sign is the most consistent and accurate one. Become very familiar with these ligaments. So each goat has a ligament on each side of their tail that feels like a rod. As the labor gets closer, they will loosen and disappear. The tail head will raise and can be wiggled back and forth. When they are completely gone, you will almost be able to completely wrap your fingers around the tail head. So feel your goat's tail before and throughout pregnancy. This will give you good practice on knowing how they feel when they aren't pregnant and what the tail area feels like as they loosen. The fourth sign is that her vulva will loosen and become swollen. Your doe's vulva can begin to loosen sometime in the last month of pregnancy and will become more prominent in like that last week of pregnancy. As labor draws near, the vulva will become loose and may even jiggle as she walks. You also may notice that when she lays down, it will be slightly open. Another sign, the fifth sign, is vaginal discharge. This sign can appear within the last month of pregnancy, but will increase as D-Day gets closer. If you notice a large amount of discharge along with several of the other signs that I mentioned, it will be a good indicator that she is in labor. The sixth sign of labor is that the doe will separate herself from the herd. Usually a doe will separate herself from the herd to begin nesting and to find a place to give birth. This will happen when labor and birth are within the next, 24 hours probably. Anytime that a goat separates herself from the herd is a sign that something is up. This is one of the first signs that your goat is sick or in labor. Moving on to the 7th sign, your doe will begin to nest and will paw the ground. A doe will begin to nest as labor gets closer. Usually, active labor will begin in the next 24 hours when this sign appears. So when a doe is nesting, she is looking for a good spot to give birth. As she paws at the ground, I imagine her pawing in pain. Am I the only one who felt like my womb was being crunched in pain that is just indescribable when I went into labor? But she really is just looking for that perfect place to lay down by moving the bedding around until it's just right. Another sign that accompanies the pawing is that the doe will get up and down repeatedly. Usually active labor will begin in the next 24 hours when this sign appears. And so as she is pawing around, she will also just lay down and get up repeatedly, trying to find that perfect position to get comfortable in. As she lays down, she may also talk to her belly. The 9th sign is that the doe will yawn, or as I call it, the silent scream of labor. Active labor will begin in the next 24 hours when this sign appears. A doe will yawn throughout labor. Why? Well, I'm not sure, but again, I just can't help but think it's the silent scream of labor. Poor girls. Getting closer to the end of the signs, this is the 10th sign, and it is a change in behavior. During the first stage of labor, many does will act like a different goat altogether. My goat Olivia, her first year of pregnancy, was very standoffish. She was the hands-off and leave me alone type of goat. That's the way she liked it. But during labor, she became very friendly. Some does may even lick you over and over or follow you around when normally they wouldn't. Or a very friendly goat may decide that she wants to be left alone and becomes standoffish. If you notice your doe is acting differently than she normally does, then this is a good sign that labor is imminent or in progress. And the last sign of goat labor is contractions. When you see contractions, labor is in progress and the babies will arrive soon. During this stage of labor and while having contractions, the goat will arch their back and their tail will arch back and forth during the contractions. After you have seen a few or all of these signs, she will move into the 2nd stage of labor. It is considered active labor. In this stage, the doe is actively pushing. You will begin to see the bag protrude, and if the bag has broken already, you will see feet. In a normal position, the bottom of the kid's feet will be facing down. If you see a tail, the kid is breech or backwards. When all is right and progressing like normal, the doe will be able to have her kids without any problems. But if she has been actively pushing for an hour or so with no progress, it would be appropriate to step in to make sure that there are no real problems. The hardest part is the waiting period between each kid. One kid arrives. How long until she begins to push again? In my experience, the doe will deliver one kid and will probably stand up and begin to lick and mother and dry off that kid. And most likely in the next 5 to 35 minutes, contractions will begin again and she will lay down again to begin to push. This waiting period will be the hardest part because it will feel like it is taking forever to begin again. You can carefully bounce her belly gently up and down to feel for any other kids, and this may also stimulate active labor as well and may help to reposition a kid that is out of place. If there is a problem within this stage, it will probably be because of one of these reasons. 2 kids are entering the birth canal at the same time, or a large kid is stuck, or a foot or a head is stuck backwards, or just stuck. I encourage you, I stress so much to have an emergency plan thought out and in place. There is nothing worse than coming out of a kidding season with regrets. In the link below, you can read about my sad experience. As the dates draw near for your goats to kid, keep in contact with your vet and make sure that they are willing to step in if problems arise. If it comes to a point where you don't know what to do and there are problems, call your vet or an experienced goat owner for help. Right now, I'm going to answer a few common questions that come up about goat labor and birth. The first question, does a goat lay down to give birth? All of my does in the past have laid down to give birth, but some will actually stand up as well. Another question that we will probably be asking as we pace the floor is, how long does a goat labor last? The first stage of labor can begin and last for possibly 12 hours, but when they begin active labor and are actually pushing, it should be within an hour that she has had her first kid or at least made progress. And another good question, how many kids will a doe have in one pregnancy? If you don't get an ultrasound done, then you can only guess how many kids your doe will have. A doe can have between 1 and 4 kids in one pregnancy, with 2 being the average. And after all of that, the kids are born. My doe Eva, who was my model goat in this video, was exhibiting all of the signs I mentioned in this video in the afternoon, and that night in the dark of the barn on a cold and snowy night, she gave birth to 3 healthy kids. After the kids are born, it is very important that the doe bonds with them. A new mother may need the kids to be brought up to her face to begin licking, but usually she will immediately move to begin licking and nuzzling them. When my does have had 3 kids, I've had to be very watchful that she bonds with the last one. It is very easy for her to bond with 2, and by the time that 3rd one is born, she can be so busy with the first 2 she forgets or may not tend to that 3rd one. If you see this happening, move that 3rd kid closer and under her nose so she sees it and can begin bonding and cleaning him. After this, stage 3 of labor will begin, expelling the placenta. This last stage is very important. The doe must expel the rest of the placenta within the first 24 hours. It is very important that all of the placenta comes out and is not retained. If any is retained, it will cause infection. But it is so very important to note, do not pull on the placenta at all. Let the doe naturally clean out on her own timing. If it hasn't cleaned out fully after a couple of days, call your vet. Most of the time, my does have cleaned out very quickly, and then they will actually eat or nibble on their own placenta. Usually they will eat some and then go back and forth between licking the kids and then nibbling on some more. But be sure that if they are still needing to mother the kids and clean them off still, that they bond with them and that they do that. If they are showing more interest in that placenta than drying off the kids, then that would be a case where you'd want to remove the placenta from that area. Eating the placenta is normal and actually good for the doe. She has just exerted a lot of energy, and this helps to give her nourishment and strength as she recovers from birth. Bouncing her belly gently may help expel the placenta if it seems to be taking longer than it should be. And after you have helped your goat through this entire process, then you get to enjoy leaping and bounding kids in every direction. Wow, that was a lot of information, but it is some of the most important information you need if you are planning to raise and own goats. When you are raising animals that have multiple babies, to combat a higher death rate, you can run into problems, and that is heartbreaking. So, study this information. Make sure you have a plan in place and be ready to take action if needed. Although kidding can be a stressful time, try to enjoy it. It is new life and it is beautiful.